Short scary hospital stories from travel nurses. Story 1: The Running Water. Once when I was working in an LTC facility, I was walking down the hall speaking to a CNA when all of a sudden we heard the loud sound of water running in the bathroom. All the patients were in bed already, so I turned to her and looked like, "WTF is that?" We walked to the bathroom, which you could only enter by key, unlocked the door, and went in. The lights were out, so we turned them on. The tub water was running full blast into the tub. No one was in there. I walked over and turned the faucet all the way until the water stopped running. I said, "Why is this water running? Everyone's in bed." The CNA said strange stuff happens in that bathroom and on the floor all the time, including lights turning on and off and stuff moving around or turning on in that particular bathroom. What's weird was I heard the water turn on as I was standing near that bathroom, and no one walked in, and the handle had to be turned all the way to the right to turn it off. Story 2. They're still here. Had a patient who would only repeat what was said to her and was with her all night. One time I went into the room and she started telling me all the ways she died. I died because of a narcotic overdose. I died because I took too much insulin. I died on a sunny Sunday afternoon, etc. Then later she looked up at the ceiling and said they're all still there. I ran out of that room as fast as I could. Another time I had a blind patient who kept asking me what time it was all night long. One time I went in to check on him and he says to me, "It's the witching hour." It was 3:33. I walked out. Story 3: The Man in the Room. I had a patient being admitted into a room about 0130. He was alert and oriented. He was rolled in on an gurney and starts freaking out about him. Can't we see him? That he's not going to stay in that room and he needs to be as far from that room as possible. We switch his room assignment and get him settled. Later in the morning, I ask who he is. Says that we need to have the room exorcised. He is apparently a very angry dead mid-40s male. He didn't like another man in his room. That room was always really cold. Summer or winter. The lights used to come on for no reason. Story 5: Till Death Do Us Part. I worked at an LTC facility as a night shift aide about 14 years ago. I worked a hall I had never been on before. It was like 1 a.m. and I saw an elderly guy walk out of a room, down the hallway, and leave the facility. I went to that room and the resident was awake. Asked her who she was talking to, and she told me her husband always came to visit her late at night. I went to ask the other 8 on the floor about it, and they told me the resident was 102 years old, and her husband had been dead for like 20 to 30 years. Swear on my life that it was an actual person leaving that hall. I could even describe his outfit and hat. Needless to say, I didn't work that hall much anymore. Story 5: Come Play With Us, Kate. I worked at Cincinnati Children's and there is a little girl who appears at that bedside if dying children the day before they pass and tells them it's going to be okay. They even mentioned her as a household name in orientation. In India at a children's hospital, we had a patient pass in surgery, but her room was haunted. A little African American boy saw her one night and said she looks like me and has one of these and one of these, pointing to his central line and GT. She also had a central line and GT. Here in Co. I just stayed at the Stanley Hotel. It's the hotel that inspired The Shining. Stephen King stayed there and felt like his bartender was a ghost and saw 2 little girls on the 4th floor when there were no other guests. I woke up every 20 minutes to nothing. And had a sock on my perfectly made bed and a luggage tag and earring on my spotless bathroom. The next morning I bought a book about the hotel hauntings and my hotel room was in it. Apparently things go missing in one part of the hotel and show up later in my room. They also have a wounded veteran donated flag who has a spot that has started to fade into a silhouette of the original owner of the hotel. Story 6. Have a good night, doctor. I got called in one night for a bad case in the OR, and we were in the middle of it, and I saw a guy in surgeon garb walk past their door and continue on towards a dead end. We were at the end of the hall. I walked to the door and couldn't find anyone, yelled out hello and still no one. I had heard that there was a ghost of a surgeon in the OR. Story 7. Don't swoosher. Worked in an LTC, where a cute little man would be clear over on one side of this twin bed, and when I asked him to scoot over, so he didn't fall off, he said he didn't want to swoosh the little girl laying next to him. I guess there used to be kids in this place at some time. I and the same whole residents would see a lady in black who would go into rooms, and within a day or two, that resident would pass. I didn't like working in that hall at night. There are Navajo, Zuni, and Hopi natives that work and go to the GIMC hospital I work at. Hear about the skinwalkers the most. Also, the floor I work on is haunted for sure. In one room I heard computer keys typing. I was in the room alone. Got up to see where the noise was coming from and the noise stopped. I sat down, and it started again. I asked a coworker, and she freaked and said yes, it is an old coworker who always did her homework for her masters in that room. She was killed in a freak car accident. Everyone seems to have heard the computer keys, and knew to BC. I said something another day about room 9 and they were like, oh man, it's her again. There are ghosts of little children, and a surgeon that roam the floor and moaning heard from room 5. I have heard and thought I have seen a little girl by room 5, and thought a patient was in the room one night, and learned no one was there. I was very freaked out. They have hired a native medicine man to come to pray, and way safe on the floor too. Also. Story 9. The Call. Back when I was a PCA, I worked at Nursy Hospital in MTRE, which is no longer there. We always had odd stuff happen, but the best was one night we got a random call upon my unit. I worked on the 5th floor tel side, the other side was oncology, from a room on the floor below us. The thing was on the 4th floor. That side had been closed for a long time, and there was no one down there. The other side was a small rehab. So we get this call, no one is in that room. So I and a few others go down and to that side of the hall. We find the room and walk in to find no one there. It was being used for storage and there was no call light or phone at that room. No one could explain it other than that we had call lights that would go off when no one was in that room. We just figured it was ghost. One more story. I'm sensitive to the paranormal, and not long after I started working there on nights the elevator 9 times out of 10 would open right as I was about to push the button. This happened a lot and only to me. Every time I would step on and say thank you ghost. Karen, if you would like to read more scary hospital stories from travel nurses, click here. Have any scary hospital stories of your own? Post them below.